What do men struggle with?
Men are dealing with words, work, wine, and women. Wine being addictions, right? Roughly, that's what men struggle with.
Men talk all day, jokes, stories, opinions. But the second it's about feelings, silence.
Interestingly, if you look at the data, we men actually talk more, but we don't talk about how we feel. We haven't been taught how to do that.
Men don't feel anything. It's because nobody ever taught them how to say what's going on inside. Men feel just as much as women, but they've never been given the words to express it.
We men have just as many emotions as women do. We don't have words for it.
Men were only taught to hide the pain, to swallow every hurt in silence, because showing tears is considered weakness. They never learned how to heal or speak their pain.
Many men have heard, don't cry, I'll give you something to cry about. Don't be weak, like you said. This is weak.
Today, these two guys dive straight into that truth. Why men feel so much, but say so little, and how it's messing with relationships everywhere. Trust me, you've never heard two dudes open up like this.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc Azoulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin. Hello, welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with Dr. Ron Johnson. He's the author of a book, Balls, which I love as a title, and he's a clinical psychologist that's worked for men for decades. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So I always like to start with the personal story. So what got you into, being a psychologist, focusing on men? What's your story?
Okay. First, being a psychologist is that somebody once asked me, I had a radio show, and somebody said, well, I heard that people go into therapy because they were trying to figure out their own problems. Absolutely true. That's why I did it. So trying to figure out myself, it come from a good family, but typical dysfunctional family as well. And so I have for a long time been interested in just how do I feel? How do I think? What do I do? And then the men thing came out accidentally because I was mostly seeing women because back in the 60s and 70s, therapy was mostly a female sort of thing. And I saw these women and what do they talk about? The men in their lives. And he did this and he did that and he's alcoholic, he's this and how can you fit? And so I thought, I need to meet these guys, these awful guys. And I met these awful guys. And what do you know? They weren't awful. I liked them, but I could kind of identify with that. So then I thought, okay, let me just move in that direction. So this is back in the 70s. I put a Yellow Pages ad when we used to have Yellow Pages. And it was Ron Johnson, psychologist, practice limited to men. What did that mean in the 70s? I was gay. I most certainly wasn't, but, anyway. So for all of those years, I've just focused my practice primarily on men. I just finished a neuropsychological that I do on women and children, but I often say women are a whole lot more complicated than men, and so it's in a way easier for me. Okay?
Yeah. Well, so I'm curious, right? Because you've been doing this for a long time. What do men struggle with? And I'm curious if you've seen that change throughout the years or, with different generations, but what brings men into treatment?
Okay, the subtitle of the book, Balls, I know it's an outrageous title, is Men Dealing with Words, Work, Wine, and Women. Wine being addictions, right? Roughly, that's what men struggle with. Interestingly, if you look at the data, we men actually talk more, but we don't talk about how we feel. We haven't been taught how to do that. And unfortunately, to some degree, women have been taught and they use it maybe to a fault, and we men are not prepared for that. So those two things interact very much. Men struggle with, how can I tell you how I feel? In fact, Deb and I wrote a book that entitled, I Want to Tell You How I Feel. That, by the way, is impossible to do because feelings are central to who I am. So by telling how I feel, I'm not necessarily telling you about my emotions. I might be telling you my thoughts or what I did or what I value or something. So that's really important. Functionally, the difficulties that men have erupt from anxiety. And the anxiety is, I'm a guy, I've got to do something. I have to produce something. And so that creates this responsibility, which I think is distinctively male. Now, yeah, women have that too, but I think for men, it's like nobody taught me how to do this. How am I going to manage my life with money and property and women and stuff and kids and whatever? And so out of that erupts the three primary difficulties that men have, and they are addictions, anger, and avoidance. So those are the three things that men often come in to see me. And by the way, my wife and I have a joke about this. Every man that comes through my office has a physical anomaly. He has a female handprint in his back. Like, you need to see the therapist, right? So thank goodness for women, because I wouldn't be in business.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what most guys come to me, right? It's like, yeah, my wife basically told me I need to go or we're going to get divorced. A lot of ultimatum therapy happening these days.
So I start with that, but that's not how we look at men. I don't look at men or women or anybody as having a diagnosis. I mean, the woman that I just saw, a good person, bright person, probably brilliant. She told me she had 6 different diagnoses. Now, the truth is that she probably has one, and that's probably PTSD. In other words, she was traumatized early, and then somebody said she's bipolar, and somebody said she's depressed or anxious or some other full diagnosis. So I don't look for what's wrong with people. I look for what's right. That, by the way, I have to be very careful with, because if I say to a guy, there's nothing wrong with you, he goes home and he says, well, the guy says there's nothing wrong with me. It must be all your fault. Wait a minute. That's not what I said. So we men don't like to be told what to do. We don't like to be diagnosed. We don't like to be criticized. Is that because we're insecure? No, that's because we're men. And men are not by nature cooperative and collective. We are by nature agenic. We're individual. And that's problematic.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, tell me more about that, right? Because I say that with some of my guys is like, the human male is like the apex predator of planet Earth, right? Where we've dominated the globe. And it's like we are these kind of like lone wolf creatures. But I do feel that, men do work well in small groups. If you look at like, a squad, right? Or like a small team or a hunting party, we've gathered in small groups. I think large groups we are real bad. But if you get a group of like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 guys, I think it can really become something special.
Yeah, I mean, the brotherhood that we see in military situations. I'm reminded of a men's group that I did some years ago. I got these guys together. They'd never been in a group before. They didn't know what that meant. We met for 2 hours or an hour and a half, and they couldn't wait to get home. And then the next time we met for 3 hours. And the next time we never met less than 4 or 5 hours, starting at 7 o'clock at night. Why? Because they felt the connection that we men generally don't have. They felt the intimacy that we men generally don't have. And when you have that with another guy, it's like, what is this? This is not sex. This is not, something that's adverse. This is something very special. So why would a guy come to see me at 7 o'clock at night and stay till midnight or later? Because he found something that was essential in life, and that is how to connect with another person.
Yeah, so what are the barriers that men have to that? Because I had the same experience, right? Like I feel like guys are really resistant to join a men's group or get into therapy, but once they experience it, they can't get enough, right? Because they're like, where has this been my whole life? It's the father I've never had, it's the brother I've never had, it's the friends I've never had. But there are such significant barriers. Can you speak to those a little bit?
Yes, the barriers first are the female handprint in my back when I'm coming into the office. Secondly, I'm going to go to the office and I'm going to be told what's wrong with me. I'm going to be diagnosed. Uh, so that's very unfortunate understanding what therapy. Therapy is really, as you well know, who am I? And then secondly, who is the world? And thirdly, how do I engage the world, whether people or property or whatever? So therapy is not originally designed really for men because it is, quote, all about feelings. Now, the truth is, the therapy is all about feelings, but ultimately it's about what am I going to do here? So if a guy comes in and he's relatively independent, I know, okay, this is a strength and it's problematic because he hasn't been taught much. He hasn't had a lot of experience with how do I do this thing with somebody else? Because I'm an independent guy. This is fine. Even people who are guys who are very unsuccessful are still by and large independent, right? I mean, Carol Gilligan really brought this to light years ago where she said, in a different voice, we men are agenic. In other words, we do something. We move forward. It's me first. I sometimes say This is the pronoun. For a man, it's I, you, and us. And for women, it's us, you, and I. So what's the problem with that? The problem with we men can be narcissistic and selfish. True. What's the problem with women? They don't have a sense of self easily. So the I drops out because they're looking at you. And when I do couples work, it's challenging because the woman comes in wanting to fix the man, and the man comes in being afraid of being fixed. And I say, you don't need to be fixed. You need to be understood. And that's going to be a struggle because then you got to use the F word, feelings. All right.
And so, what do you think the like allergic feelings thing is? Because I do find, yeah, a lot of men struggle with that. I struggled with that until I got into therapy. I just like didn't even know what to say. Like I had like good, bad, and then like high energy and low energy was about as far as I could get to. I didn't know anything really about emotions.
That's, of course, the key factor. As you well know, we men have just as many emotions as women do. We don't have words for it. How do I say how I feel? Like I said earlier, if I say how I feel, whatever I say, whatever comes out of my mouth will be wrong. It'll be approximate. So who are the best men who speak their feelings? Artists, poets, musicians. They speak their feelings. But you have poetic license, you have artistic license, you have musical license to do that. But if I'm just going to tell you how I feel, I have to say something like this. I think maybe like, let me try that. That's not right. I feel awful. No, and so I feel stupid. I'm not stupid. I just don't have a vocabulary for the whole business of feelings.
Yeah, how do you help men become more emotive? Because I find that even after a lot of therapy, I think we can develop EQ, but even when we express our feelings, it's still very masculine in a way, right? It's like reading off a list. It's like, okay, I've, checked the data, I've looked at the experiments, and I'm like, I guess I'm a little angry, or like I'm grieving, right? I think men will say like, yeah, I'm mourning or I'm in grief, but it's very still difficult for us to express that, to actually cry or to get frustrated or to be truly vulnerable.
You said a really important thing there, grieving. That's another book Deb and I wrote together. We called it Good Grief. Underneath anxiety is always grief. Underneath anger is always grief. And so I don't say, like his wife or girlfriend or mother might say, he's got an anger issue. I hate the term anger issue, anger management. Like management? What are you talking about here? We're talking about preventing anger. How do I do that? Anytime I'm angry, I have lost something. Maybe an idea, maybe a person, maybe a place, maybe a piece of money. It could have been seconds ago or years ago. My anger is about the past, and anxiety is about the future. I'm afraid of losing something, so it's all about losing. My belief is in the present. My ideal, normal emotions are joy and sorrow. I have it, joy. I lose it, sad. If I'm in the future, I'm anxious. If I'm in the past, I'm angry. So that is pretty much the heart of what I do with men to face what happened in their early life or yesterday or the day before. But as you well know, most of this is early life.
Yeah, a lot of it's early childhood, right? Or like even pre-verbal stuff, right? But yeah, I do find that grief is so hard for men to get into. So I want to just thread on that a little bit more, right? And if you have any tools or techniques that help guys to feel that, because I think we all grieve things, but what I've seen from guys, especially if they're stuck in that kind of like toxic masculinity thing, it's the idea that grief is weak, right? To like care about something so much and be sad about it is weak. It shows that you should be fine with nothing, right? We should be fine like in the woods with a stick and a fire is all we need. We don't need love. We don't need connection. We don't need our future, right? We just need like food on the table. So how do you help guys like feel that?
I say this, grief is a love problem. What does that mean? It means I loved something and I lost it. Anger is a love problem. I love something in the past and I lost it. Anxiety is a love problem. I'm afraid of losing something in the future. So it's all about love. It's about if I'm going to love something, I don't care what it is, person, place, thing, idea, I'm going to lose it. I am going to lose whatever I love. That could be property or person or something. It might be a year, it might be 50 years, but I'm gonna lose it. I have to have this operation where I feel sad, and we men have not been encouraged to feel sad. What have we heard? I didn't hear that, but many men have heard it. "Don't cry, I'll give you something to cry about. Don't be weak," like you said, "This is weak." Somebody said to me he was crying because he couldn't get on baseball team when he was a kid, and he said, "I got the term tear bucket. I'm a tear bucket because this poor kid was feeling sad because he didn't get on the baseball team, right? Well, he should feel sad, not angry, not afraid, just simply sad. The key here is sadness ends. Anger doesn't end, turns to violence. Anxiety doesn't end, it turns to some addiction or something else. But sadness ends. And that's a concept that's very hard for men to do because if they've lived 20, 30, 40, 60 years and they haven't ever really come to grips with the fact of the losses that they've had in their lives, then you and I have to help them unpack. Where does it start? Well, it started because I lost my girlfriend last week. Okay, what happened before that? Well, I had this job that didn't work. What about before that? Well, when I was a teenager, I was scrawny and I wasn't good in football. It's like we just go back and unpack those, feel it, finish it. Finish it. That's the task, is finishing the past. So I can't change the past, but I can finish the past.
You can get some closure, you can resolve it, right? You can be like, you can come to acceptance, but it does mean feeling through all those difficult feelings.
Maybe you know, but my wife and I had a pretty significant loss in our life. That was our daughter. She died 6 years ago, and we know how to do it. We know what's the it? The it is grieving. So we said, we're just going to go on a trip west and call this a grieving trip. And people said, where are you going? I said, I told you, west. Where? West.
What more do you need? Just
Yes,
drive,
we're just
you know?
going west. So we stopped at a river, at a waterfall where our daughter Chrissy used to have her kids, and we're spreading ashes. And this woman said, "What's going on here?" And I said, or my wife said, "Well, our daughter died." That's the beginning of the sentence. And this woman wrapped her arms around her and said, "I am so sorry. Let me pray for you." And fine, she's praying for me. And another situation was very much like that. We were at the source of the Mississippi where you walk across the river, and somebody said the same thing. And she said, "Would you take a picture of us? What's going on?" Our daughter died, wrapped her arms around my wife. She's crying. Well, what does that mean? These people loved us. Now, I haven't ever seen these people now for 6 years, but they loved us. And how did they love us? I felt sad, and they helped me get through sad. And it's hard for us men to realize that I can't do sad alone. I have to do it with somebody else. As you well know, a therapist. Ideally, a partner, a friend. Probably not with your parents who caused some of this.
Probably not the ones that, yeah, that installed the buttons and know how to push them, you know? Like, yeah, grief is like, it's the most universal emotion, right? Because I think just how death comes for everybody, grief comes for everybody too. You know, it's just everyone will experience it no matter what.
Exactly right. I think it's the most important emotion that we have. And the most basic is fear, because we're born only with fear. We're not born with sadness or joy or anger, just fear. So that's why anxiety is so prevalent in our culture. And as you well know, with us men, I mean, I'm responsible. I have to do this. I mean, who taught you what you're doing? Nobody taught you how this. You tried and error, and you screwed up, and it worked. You learn something over time. So that's a great thing, because here you got this podcast going, right? And you're serving people. But who taught you how to do that? Nobody. Nobody taught. Right. Well, nobody taught me how to do therapy. The only way I learned to do therapy was to be in therapy. I probably had 400 hours, 6 or 8 different therapists, some good, some not so good, but doesn't matter. And that's how I learned to do therapy.
Yeah, can you speak more to that, like, management framework that I think you're laying out here? Because as you're feeling that, as you're talking that, I feel resonance. I'm like, yeah, I do feel like that pressure, the idea I have to manage my life, manage my wife, you know, my job, future kids, right? There's like that kind of like control, maybe power, maybe leadership, maybe is a better word, right? And I think most men would resonate with that. But like you're saying in the beginning of the show, I don't think women understand that because I think that they go through the world in a completely different way. They're way more relational and way more connection and way more, you know, kind of present moment oriented than men are. But if you could just speak to that, because you're the first guest I've had that really, I think, laid that out so direct of just kind of the male psyche, you know, and the things that we're just kind of wrestling with all the time.
I think it's a central issue for us men, and it's not first anxiety, it's second anxiety, it's first responsibility, and the responsibility are the things that mentioned. That's the kids, that's the people, that's the property, that's the money, that's whatever my profession is going to be, all of that. And most of us have not been taught that. And what does that mean? Taught that if you're going to be a man, you are going to be disappointed. You're going to be sad. You're going to screw up. You're going to make mistakes. People won't like you. It's not like get used to it, get over it. No, this is how you face it. You face it. This is difficult. I'm hurt here. I call hurt a four-letter word for us men. Hurt. I've been with couples and I say, when is the last time that your husband said he was hurt? Well, I can't remember that. And he says, "Well, I was hurt a lot." I said, "Did you say it?" Well, it didn't occur to me to say I was hurt because what you said here, that's weak, that's feminine. What? No, it isn't. It's human. So getting that into a man is very difficult. And then, as you well know, is extremely freeing. It's extremely freeing. I've had men crying in my office and they say, "Why am I crying?" And I say, "You got a love problem. This is sad. You've lost something or you love something and you're remembering it. This is some mixture of joy and sorrow." And then you go, "Oh, well, I've never cried in front of a man before." Well, I say, "I feel very privileged. Thank you very much."
Yeah. And I think we need that. We need that, especially I think with mentor, you know, father figures to be able to be held in masculine love. I think it's absolutely critical, you know, because many of us don't have that and we're so guarded. And then I think we put it unfairly on women, you know, where we're expecting them to treat us like a father and give us, you know, the actionable step or hold us accountable or do these kind of like manly ways of growth. And that's not what they do because their world is very different. They're much more, they're better validating, right? And accepting and improving and you know applying comfort. Whereas I think men, we need like challenge and we need brotherhood and we need like you know someone that's going to walk with us through a difficult thing rather than telling us to like hey take a break.
Exactly. I'm reminded of the Apostle Paul in one of his books says, "We treated you like a father," and check this out, encouraging, challenging, and sacrificing. Yeah, I need to be encouraged. I need to be challenged. And I need to have somebody that's actually with me going through something. And many men have just not had that. And so that's really what it's like. And then if you have a woman in your life that's able to do that, I'm thinking, Mark, about this morning. We woke up kind of early. I was going to do this neuropsychological, and I'm going to see you. I had some other kind of bruise that I needed to take care of. We had some electrical problem, and I was saying, Deb, as I think about today, my first feeling is the responsibility that I have. I have to do this stuff. And I said, I have to be very careful here because it can bleed into anxiety. And we talked about those three things. I said, I don't know this, Mark, and the last time I tried to get on, it didn't work, and it might not work. I don't know who this patient is, if she's going to be crazy or not, or whatever. I don't know what the electrical problem is. I mean, all of these things, this is just a natural day, right? I mean, this is not something weird. Every man has this. And so we talked. She encouraged me. She said, you know what? Let's do this. Let's put the electrical thing on the background. We don't actually have to do that. You know, the lights in this section of the house don't work. It's not terribly important. Let's take one thing at a time. And so I get the best of what womanhood is here. She's with me. She understands me, but I have to tell her who I am. I have to say I feel responsible. I feel borderline anxious. That's all. And she didn't say, do this, do that. She just said, thanks for telling me.
If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show. I want to hear more about that, because something that I see with a lot of the couples that, I work with is the opposite of that, right? Where you have the man that I think is projecting mom onto their partner, and they want their partner to be able to mind read, to soothe them, to kind of like coddle them in many ways, right? To hold them when they cry. And none of the things are bad, but I think it's that mind reading part that I think really becomes problematic. And then what I see in those relationships, I'm curious your experience, but I see like the wife gets the ick, right? She gets kind of disgusted by the man because she wants a man, she wants a partner. She wants like a strong leader. She doesn't want a little baby boy, right? So I think when men, the ones that are emotional, they kind of do this thing from a younger part of themselves, So I'm curious, as you're talking, is what I was thinking about is like, how do you level up? How do you be emotional with your woman, right? With your spouse or partner, but not fall into the kind of sniveling mess? I think it's an art form, but I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Well said. It is an art form. It is something that you can slowly develop. I think for most of us men, we've had too much mother and not enough father. Mother is the security. I feel safe. I'm nurtured. Maybe the mother figure could be male or whatever, but the mother figure, we have too much of that. And so that doesn't allow us to transfer from the safety of mother or mother figure in early life to the relative unsafety of the rest of life. And that's where fathers need to come in and they say, fine, this is good. Now we got to do something here, right? Now we have to move forward, and it's not going to be easy, and we're going to fail, and I'm not too sure, and he's not going to like you. That's the encouragement and challenge. And if you have the right father, and many of us haven't had that. I have a fair bit of it, but I missed a fair bit of it because my father was emotional, but that often turned to anger, which of course is emotion, but ultimately is not helpful. So the task here is to develop a relationship with a woman where you can say how you feel, inadequately, approximately, and she can say something like, this is what I try to teach women. This is what I want you to say. I want you to say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Tell me more. Which is exactly functionally what Dad did this morning for me. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Tell me more. And then I tell her more. And then all of a sudden, my anxiety is gone. And my potential sadness or disappointment is gone. It's like, okay, I'm going to meet Mark. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what he's going to say, but we'll see what happens. So very few men have that. They have a woman who looks up to the man, but looking up to us is very dangerous. I think ideally, a woman should look at us as a leader. But if I'm going to be a leader, I'm going to make mistakes. If I'm going to be a leader, I'm going to say something that's not quite right, do something that's not quite right. I have to have the capacity to make mistakes and to be criticized and to be improved. That's a task that is also very hard for us. And if a woman looks up at us, I think if I look up at it, she will eventually be looking down at us because this is what you need to do. This is your problem and this is your diagnosis. And that's where, as you well know, many couples end up. Well, he should do this and he should do that. And what about this? You know what? She's probably right, but you shouldn't tell him. He has to find that out himself.
You can't do it that way, right? Because then it becomes like, the nag or the controlling wife, and then the guy just going to push away and, like I said, bear himself in addiction or dissociation or anger, things like that, Yeah, and that's what I tell my guys of like, what separates a boy from a man is taking responsibility for your life, And just like you're saying, like a man, I think like thrives on feedback and wants critique and criticism, as long as it's coming from a place of, mutual respect. I think that's critical. But I think like a man really wants to get better and improve and develop life mastery. And we can't do that if people are not being honest with us, right? Or we are pushing people away that are honest with us. We need those mirrors, and they're rarer and rarer these days. It feels like everyone's like in their own little self-gratifying validation bubble, and we're not getting the mirror that we need to actually improve as a person. We're not getting the coaching that we need to improve as a man.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm reminded of a 75-year-old lawyer who was referred to me because he thought his doc thought that he might have dementia. So I did a neuropsychological on him and I did some testing. And I'm along the way, by the way, he's 75. He told me he's working 72 to 80 hours a week. Why is that? Because he loves what he's doing. Much of it is gratis. Now, that's not wrong, but that's not complete. And so his capacity for knowing how he feels, saying how he feels was almost zero. And this guy's brilliant, okay? And a good person of good character, but didn't have this emotional ability to add to it. So, you know, and his wife was saying, well, he needs to work less. And I said, yeah, eventually he does, but let's just take him what he is. This is independence and self-sufficiency and agency to a fault. This is not something wrong with him. This is maleness at its best, and oh, by the way, to a fault at its worst. Then I don't need anybody. So we're talking about growing up, are we not? Isn't this really what this is growing up? And if I get a diagnosis of depression or anxiety or some other fool thing, it's like, that's not going to help me. Maybe the insurance will pay for therapy, but that's really not going to help me. What's going to help me? I need to grow up. So mom will bring Johnny in, and Johnny is 8, okay, physically. Well, he hates school, and he's just outrageous. Well, I do some testing on Johnny, and I find Johnny is very bright. He's 12 years old intellectually. Oh, by the way, Johnny at 8 is about 4 years old emotionally. So who are you talking to here? You talking to the 4-year-old Johnny or the 12-year-old? Or worse than that, you're talking to the 4-year-old with the 12-year-old vocabulary. That is something like what we men end up in being. We could be people of good character, intelligent, successful, but we don't have a vocabulary and a sense of a fluency with how I feel, ultimately, how I can say it. And if I do that, then I can understand how other people feel, which is, of course, ultimately what I really have to do as well.
Yeah. So tell me about the aspects of growing up. I'm hearing that developing EQ and empathy is part of it. Taking responsibility for, like we said, your spouse, your property, your health, all that kind of stuff. What else would you put in that list of what makes like a grown man, an adult, a true adult man?
It's roughly what I think are kind of the trifecta of life, which is thinking, feeling, and doing. With a lot of men, it's two of those things, very often thinking and doing. Sometimes feeling and doing, but not thinking. So, I mean, growing up, I think for most of us men, is growing up emotionally. So I know what I feel. I express how I feel. I realize that every time I express how I feel, I'm not necessarily communicating, I'm stumbling, but it's an important factor. Furthermore, if I know how you feel, I will love you. I will love you. If I see you, it's my favorite line in Avatar. I see you. That's the way people said, hi, I see you. I thought that's just so cool. So if I see how you are, which is primarily how you feel, I will love you, and I need to be loved. I can't ask for it. I can't demand it. I don't deserve it, but I need it. So that's, in my mind, maturity is predominantly with how I feel. Now, sometimes maturity is realizing, you know what? I'm in the wrong profession. I'm in the wrong job. I knew a guy who was a nurse by training, and he was, loosely speaking, a pill pusher who worked for pharmaceuticals. He's making $300,000 a year. Hated his work. Hated his work. Now, what's the problem here? Is the work? No, the problem is that he wasn't doing what he really wanted to do. And he said, used to really enjoy nursing. And what was he making? $80,000. And I'm thinking, so go to nursing. Well, now I got the kid and the dog and everything else. I got to take care of this stuff. So growing up, I think, is predominantly growing up emotionally. And then eventually that affects my work. It eventually affects my relationships with people. I'm a better parent. I'm a better friend. I'm a better community servant.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to ask you about that, the patient you just talked about, right? It's like, how do you work with that kind of midlife crisis guy. In my work, I find kind of a couple archetypes come in. One being this dude, right? The midlife crisis guy who realizes that he did everything right, checked all the boxes, but he's miserable. And maybe he has like, an addiction, or he watches too much porn, or he's overweight. Like, there's something that's just like, falling away, right? Maybe there's divorce on the other end. So tell me about that guy, because I think what you brought up is something that a lot of therapists also don't recognize, is like the logistical burden of being a man or being a dad. Right? I think so much of the therapists are like, "Hey, follow your dreams and become a sculptor," and the guy's like, No, like I have to take care of two kids and a wife, and I have, we're in private school and I'm saving for their education, and like I can't just like stop my work. I can't just go on this like soul searching, trip to Australia or whatever, right? Like there's so much momentum, I think, behind a lot of men's life that I find that our industry doesn't respect nearly as much as I think it should. So I'm curious, like how you work with that midlife crisis dude that needs to grow up emotionally, but again has all this baggage, and all this inertia.
You know what I call this? I call this the second half of life. I did a workshop with men, and the range of men in this workshop was 30 to 80. 80? Yeah.
80 for second half? That's
80, second half of
optimistic.
life. That's not days. But now, what am I going to do? This guy, this 80-year-old, by the way, is a retired physics engineering professor, brilliant guy. And there was once I'm doing therapy with him, and I said, "Well, I want to try to help you understand sadness." And he said this, "What is that?" I mean, this brilliant guy, I think he's 82, he did not know what it was to be sad. He knew what it was to be angry or to be fulfilled or to be happy, but he didn't know how to be scared. I mean, so the second half of life is now what? And so I see right now, I think I see three couples who are 70 or 80 in that neighborhood. And the second half of life is now what? And Mark, the second half of life for many men that age is what's wrong with me physically. I'm sure you also know that a lot of what's wrong with me physically is psychogenic. I just don't know that. It starts with anxiety, and then all of a sudden, I have TMJ, or I have headaches, or, I have cancer, whatever. So I think this midlife crisis for men is, okay, now what? I'm reminded of a guy that I just started to see. I happened to see him remote. He lives in Canada. He's a pastor, and he's a pastor of a very large church, been very successful, very good person of good character, intelligent, and he is riddled with anxiety. In fact, presently he's on disability or temporary disability. And he said, I don't know what's going on with me. What's wrong with me? And so slowly but surely, I'm trying to help this guy find how he feels. And he's one of several men, and I'm sure you've had the same experience. Why am I crying? You're crying because you feel. And what do you feel? You feel this love thing that you had or that you lost. And of course, with him, had your typical dad. And his dad used to say, he's from Newfoundland, Canada, is a typical expression, uh, don't be so foolish. Don't be so foolish when you're crying. Well, that's not going to help you learn how to cry.
No, it's gonna shut it straight down, right?
You're gonna shut it straight down. And then, of course, what we have is, like I said, the only diagnosis that I pretty much ever use, which is PTSD. And so what's this? Is this a trauma? Not really. No, it's the emotion that was associated with the trauma that I couldn't feel. So this midlife thing, I think predominantly is, what am I going to do with the rest of my life here? You know, one guy, do I really want to, sell pills, or do I really want to go back and be a nurse? Do I really want to do this? And some people, do I really want to be married? I mean, how many people do you see that say, I never should have got married. I'm with her. We got the kids. We got the house. We've been together 30 years. And I don't even know if I love her.
I was gonna ask you that earlier. Like I see it. It's almost like 6 or 7 times out of 10 where the guy that comes on with like the wife's handprint on the back, right? Like he comes in, he does work for call it 2, 3, maybe 4 years, and then divorces her. Right? He realizes that like he didn't want to be married, or he realizes that like he's done all this emotional work and she hasn't quite caught up with it. He's trying to be open and vulnerable and do the stuff, and like she's not there. Like, do you see that pattern in the work that you do? Yeah, it's like it's tragic and kind of funny at the same time.
Well, it starts with admitting, "I don't wanna be married. I shouldn't have been married." And then it doesn't mean you have to get divorced or you should get divorced, but, instead of running into, promiscuity or some other kind of, addiction, let's just start with, I shouldn't have got married." Well, that sounds bad. I mean, some people say, "I shouldn't have had kids." "Oh, that sounds bad. I shouldn't say that." Wait a minute. We're not talking about not loving your kids. We're talking about how you feel, okay? And when you say how you feel, it's always approximate and it's maybe often a bit weird. So it's a challenge to meet men that shouldn't have been married and then eventually got unmarried too soon or stayed married too long or something. But it starts with, let's just see how this really started.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it often, yeah, for a lot of guys, we are very eyes closed and very achievement focused as young men, right? So for many of us, having like, the beautiful wife and the children and the family and the house, it's like that's like scoring points. And then we don't realize, like you said, that what the impact of that was. The way I talk about with my guys, I use a lot of the kind of like mythical or Jungian archetypes. So I say the midlife thing is like going from warrior to king. I think many of us are taught how to be warriors, but we don't know nothing about how to be a king because, our fathers are absent or they didn't know either, So, and I think to your point, that king energy is about emotional leadership. It's about selflessness and it's about, panoramic vision and being able to see like the full playing field. And it's a totally different skill set that I think when men see and they try to hit it with that warrior mentality of like harder, faster, better, stronger, they fail very quickly, because it's just a different thing.
So what we're trying to do here, I think, sounds like we're similar in this. We're trying to help not people change or correct or fix or be different, but add. We're adding an element here. I mean, it's wonderful to have the warrior element inside of me. That's is I'm going to go forward and do something. I might succeed or fail. But then to add to that king, it's like, okay, that's leadership. What does that mean? That means that I have to first be who I am, and secondly, be honest with who I am and what I've done, which of course is very often a problem with men, because I'm just not honest. Because why? Because I'm afraid of criticism. That's all. It's that simple. I don't want her to criticize me. And so to develop kingship is to develop what you said, Mark, leadership. That is not controlling. That's not demanding. And leadership, in my mind, is this is what I think we should do. This is what I think is important. Now let me hear from you. That's leadership. I'm trying to think of a political figure that actually has that. Sorry, nobody comes to mind.
I know, very hard to find these days. But yeah, if you think of like the archetype of a good king, right? Like they're listening to their subjects and their court and all the different advisors that they have, right? Like they're not alone on the throne. Sure, they make the ultimate decision, but King Arthur had like the whole round table plus, the Merlin and everyone. He had the whole team with him. Um, but yes, these days not so much, right? It's more tyrant.
I like the King Arthur metaphor. Yeah, that's really good. That he did not do that alone. I mean, we don't think of King Arthur and what he did. We think of the Round Table.
Well, so I'm curious to kind of extend that, like, how do you help men develop that warrior energy? Because when I look at my generation, the millennials, right, I think a lot of us are nice guys where we don't have that fight. We're very passive, I think, in many ways, and very afraid of being male. My kind of theory, and it's not my theory. I've read about it, right? It's like many of us grew up in divorced homes, so we were taught that being male was bad because we had the asshole dad, right? And we were staying with the mom, and we were getting this kind of like propaganda. So I find in my generation, we a lot of us lack that warrior energy and we struggle. We have a lot of failure to launch and we have a lot of, obesity and we have a lot of marijuana and gaming addiction, right? Just like a lot of these types of comfort seeking behavior. So I'm curious, I guess, question one, like, do you see that in the younger generations? Am I onto something here? And question two, what do you do about it?
Well, I'm reminded of the fledgling men's movement that was back in the 80s and a little bit into the 90s, and that was roughly to make men softer, which is fine, but it failed because it didn't integrate what it means to be a leader and to have the warrior element in that. That's not we don't take that away, but we're going to add to it. So I think the idea of adding to what I have here, but you're absolutely right. I see the excesses of men my generation or older were basically dominant. That was leadership. That is not meaningful leadership. That's domination and controlling. And what I see with people your age, or I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to hang my ass out here and let's try this thing. I don't know how to say what I think because I might be criticized. Roughly, I don't always say it directly. I say, you haven't made enough mistakes. You haven't screwed up enough. I mean, I wrote a blog on my regrets and mistakes that I made in life. A surprising number of men said, "This was so good. You just said the things that," and I could really identify with this. But who has taught us that I need to make mistakes, not by design. I don't need to just go willy-nilly and just, I think I'm gonna, move to Tanzania, but I need to not just follow my dream, but I need to find out who I am and move forward, and I will make mistakes. So I think roughly what I see with people your age and younger is undue fear of making mistakes or criticism.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. And I think, one reason I think so much media has become judgment-based media, right? Like reality TV or social media and all these things where we're so afraid of being humiliated. I mean, something that I had to overcome was like a fear of humiliation. And like being good at being bad at stuff is how I talk about it, right? Like you have to like be able to endure when you're just failing and falling on your face and out of your comfort zone. I think a lot of us are not, especially those that are perfectionists or that were, gifted as kids or whatever, right? Where we were able to just kind of procrastinate and just coast through everything. All of a sudden, that doesn't work, right? All of a sudden, life gets real and you're up against something that you really don't know anything about and don't have any way to learn.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online.
I'm reminded of a time when I was in a chemistry class in high school, and I had a test tube in my hand, and I'd just been on the Bunsen burner, and I put it under the water. What do you think happened? The test tube broke, and to her credit, my teacher was right there, and she said, "Do you know why that happened?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Good. End of story. No shaming, no criticism. No, you should have known better. None of that." And we don't get much of that. We don't get the privilege to make mistakes, trial and error, and not be rescued and not be indulged. The trouble with us men is we, like I said before, I think we get too much mother or mother figures in our life. We get too much indulgence and we mistakenly think women are going to do that. But more importantly, we don't learn to hang our ass out. And I think I really should do that. I really should move forward. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, Deb and I moved to Newfoundland and we lived there for 4 years. It was a wonderful experience. We didn't know what we were going to do, but we worked for ourselves because we're unemployable. And so we just hung the shingle and all of a sudden we're working. And so it was one of the best experiences of my life. But I was raised privileged to have a family that didn't criticize me, but they encouraged me to try something and try anything. Most men have not had that, especially the recent 20, 30, 40 years. It's this protective mentality instead of, let's see. See, I was raised like a lot of people my age. Yeah, go out and play. Not, do you have your helmet on if you're on your bicycle, or who are you going to be? Do you have your cell phone if you're 6 years old? Wait a minute, just go out and play. Well, is there more danger today than there was before? I don't think so. But if you broke your leg, yeah, probably less. And to be raised in an environment where you trial and error. I mean, I came home once. We lived 6 miles away from school, and I missed the bus because I was up late. And I came home. I said, "Mom, I missed the bus." She said, "Ronnie, I'm really sorry." Period. She didn't say anything else. What did that mean? I walked to school. How many times are you going to walk 6 miles to school? Once, right? I learned by trial and error. So I don't think the current generation has had enough errors. They haven't enough actually try this and move forward and take uh, the criticism and make the mistakes. And then also, by the way, have great successes. And God, I feel good about myself.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I think it's really well said, and I agree. I think there's not enough risk because it was like yes, sometimes bad things happened, right, in the previous generations, but I think that made the other generation very afraid of that, and I think we were way too about risk mitigation and not enough about the joy of exploration or like you said, like natural consequences. Hey, if you make a mistake, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but it does mean your life's going to be harder for the next hour or so, right? And you have to try to like figure out this thing and I think also the idea of experimentation and learning how to learn is so critical. And I hope parenting, I think it is shifting a little bit back to that, but I do feel like for my generation and Gen Z, it was way too much hover parents and way too much like, main character syndrome in a way, right? Like if my kid is not doing well, I'm going to call the school board, I'm going to change the policy, and I'm going to make it so that my kid succeeds, which is just not a realistic way for the world works.
It's really not. I'm thinking about this trial and error thing. We for a time, my family lived on a lake here in Wisconsin, and we had a speedboat. And my brother and I thought we should try such, and my dad said, "Try whatever you want." So we got a log, and put that behind the boat. And we got on the log. Of course, can you imagine what happened? Boom, right in the water.
For sure, it's thrown
It
off.
didn't work. That seemed like that was gonna work. I'm just seeing myself gonna ride in this. Wrong. That didn't work. So we thought, okay, what else? Let's put a table on there. So we put a table on there, got on the table, and that worked for a while until the table broke. It's but that whole experience of being able to just try something and fail and laugh at yourself and not be ashamed.
And I think that's what we need, and I think that's what, like, good therapy is too, right? Is, like, pushing the guy out of his comfort zone and then, celebrating the wins, but also I think as men, humor is huge for us. So, yeah, laughing when it goes poorly, being able to pick yourself up back up and get back in the fight.
Well, I'm 82, so I play basketball 3 days a week. I'm always the oldest guy. I'm always the worst guy, and people make fun of me. Like somebody said, "Ron, was the basketball round when you started? I mean, did they have the peach basket there?" And they just giving me shit for, and it's wonderful. I'm just laughing at myself, and they're laughing at me, and they're it's not shaming. It's just I'm doing the very best I can. I'm the worst guy always out there, but they admire me because I'm 80 some years old and I'm doing what these guys are now doing when they're 30 or 50 or something. So it's a really important part of maleness, I think. And this does not mean just do whatever you want.
It's really important, and I think, it's, again, not really understood by our industry. Same thing as, I go to a CrossFit gym, and there's an older gentleman there, right? And, like, we, like, rib him, right? But it comes from respect, and it comes from, like, mutual belonging. Like, he's always there. He's more consistent than, like, most of the other guys there. He's always there. And, like, also we make sure he gets the good rack. We make sure that, like, we were picking up his weights if he's tired. We, like, make sure that he has a place to sit down if he needs it. So we're taking care of him too. But it is this kind of, like, belonging and hierarchy thing that I think, again, I think like females and I think our industry, because of that, saw as like hazing or as bullying or something. And that stuff happens. It certainly does. But there is something male about, that kind of playful ribbing, but with that sense of belonging and respect.
So isn't it a beautiful thing? The words might just be the same as we might have got when we were kids, bullying or teasing, but the emotion behind that is roughly, I love you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's like, I appreciate you. I'm happy you're here. Like you're bringing, it's something to talk about. It's fun. Yeah, and as long as he's giving it right back, because there's sometimes where he'll lift more than someone else, and he loves those days. Like as long as he's giving it right back, then it's all good.
That's one of the things I think that's misunderstood with men and women is that we men engage emotionally in a different way than women engage. We compete, we tease, we laugh, we swear at each other, and this isn't necessarily bad. It can be. I mean, historically, of course, it can be. But if I'm engaging a woman and I'm doing that, and she's not familiar with that give and take, and she's going to say, "Well, I'm hurt," and I haven't ever heard that word in my life, and I think, "Oh my God, what does that mean? And what did I do wrong? And what's wrong with me?" Then I'm in trouble. So yeah, that's what makes the whole women thing difficult. But what you said, and I said several times, is really important. That's kind of uh, male bonding and connection and the intimacy that I have with another man, which I can't have with another woman. I can have wonderful intimacy, but that's not the same thing that I have with a guy who I really love, who I may, by the way, never say that to. I just feel it.
Right. Right. And we're saying it by, teasing each other. But yeah, I just want to highlight that. Like, I think men, we need both. We need intimacy with males and females. And it's critical because we need both of those ingredients to get, the healthy emotional soup and to be able to grow up and to feel supported and seen. All things we've been talking about during this episode. As we're moving towards the end, I kind of have a final question for you. It's like, yeah, you said you're 82, you've been doing this for a long time. Like, you're clearly full of energy, you're excited, you're passionate. Like, how do you keep that? That's a question for me. Like, I've been doing this for 10 years and I move in and out of burnout. But I'm curious, like, how do you stay excited, engaged, and enjoying the work that
I realized I was talking to somebody about this just the other day. Excitement and anxiety are two different ways of looking at the same phenomenon. I can have this energy that's inside of me, and I'm excited about doing something. And by the way, I might succeed or fail. If I'm afraid of it, then I'm cautious. Okay, so I would say the first ingredient here is how can I be excited about what I'm doing? And I think that's the sort of start of it. If I can be excited and look forward and jump right in. Now, remind me here, I must say, I drifted away. Remind me what you just asked me because I forgot it.
yeah, how do you maintain that excitement without getting
How do you
burnt out
maintain
or
that?
jaded?
Okay, and how am I
Yeah.
at 82 still interested in what I'm doing? A couple things. One thing is 400 hours of therapy helps me a lot. Good wife who loves me, a couple of good friends who love me. Um, and the fact that I cry every day, absolutely every day. Uh, I'd be interested to hear if this is true for you. If I'm really doing intimate therapy, almost exclusively with, well, it is exclusively with men and a few couples, I find myself tearful. And what is this tearful? I very often say, I'm feeling emotional, which, as you well know, as a therapist, this is transference. What's happening here is I'm feeling what you're feeling. And so I don't weep or necessarily even leak tears, but I know how I'm feeling. So when I'm in therapy, I am fully there and I am feeling whatever this guy is feeling, even if I have to take a step back because he doesn't know what he feels. And so I have never felt burned out. I have felt disappointed. I have felt excited. I have done the right thing. I've done the wrong thing, lots of wrong things. And so I am excited about what I'm doing, and writing is a more important part of my life now. But still, I just so enjoy the excitement of I'm going to sit with a man who has never in his life cried, and he's going to cry with me. I'm not looking that he cries, but that's probably what's going to happen. And Mark, I tell you, is there anything more rewarding than actually seeing a guy wake up to how he feels and who he is? And then he likes himself and he feels better. And oh, by the way, he also develops humility along the way. Um, it's humbling for me to be the worst guy in the basketball court, but it's exciting to go there anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it's powerful stuff. It's really powerful stuff. I think to like, yeah, the way I look at it is like bringing men back to life. I think there's so many guys that are shut down for a myriad of reasons, and when you get that moment of tears or realization or forward momentum, it's like, whoa, you're alive again. Like, hi, like I've been waiting for you. It's good. It's good to see you on the other side. We've been waiting to see you here. And I think that is quite rewarding.
One final moment, if you will. I was thinking about a guy that was this 50-year-old. Chris happens to be anyway a pastor. I think I mentioned. Very very rational, very good person of character, and he has this anxiety. And we're talking, and he's crying a little bit, and he's remembering some things. And I say, Jim, that's not his name, but anyway, Jim, what's your level of anxiety? And he looks at me and he goes, none. I don't have any. I said, try to remember that. You're feeling sad, but you're not feeling anxious. Jim, you can't feel both anxiety and sadness at the same time, because sadness is about what you love. Anxiety is about what you're afraid you're going to lose. Big difference. So that's what I think about growing up.
Growing up. I love that. That's fantastic. So yeah, Ron, as we're wrapping up here, where can people find you online? Where can they get the book? If they want to learn more about you, hear more of what you have to say, where should they check it out?
They can get the book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or something. It's just balls. I think Google balls, you'll find it. And the subtitle is Men Finding Courage in These Various Areas. My website is midlandpsychological.com. MIDLANDS, psychological, all one word, .com. It's that simple. And you'll get to me, or you'll get to my secretary, or you'll get to a blog if you want, or you get to the book or something. And so they can find me.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. Nice to meet you, Mark.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And listeners, all of Ron's links will be in the show notes. You go ahead and check that stuff out. Order the book, check out the website, read the blogs. There's a lot of content there with a lot of experience. So if you have some time, rabbit hole, deep dive, there's a lot of stuff that you can learn from this. And, do the social stuff. So like, share, subscribe, what it is by now. Send this to somebody that maybe needs to hear this conversation, that needs some inspiration, maybe someone that's in that midlife crisis, or someone that needs to work on being able to vocalize their feelings. I think this could be a very inspiring conversation for them. So listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week, another episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.